Hello, welcome to my tutorial on how I drew this piece called Summer Harvest. If you are a subscriber over on Patreon, the 1 hour tutorial is available along with the line art that I used to create this art piece. To create the blurry background, I start off with doing light layers of blues and greens. I'm just working out where I want the dark areas and the light areas in the background. I'm not following the reference photo too closely. It just, because it's a blurry background, it doesn't matter if the everything is in exactly the right spot or not. And I've blended out that first section using an odorless solvent on the brush. And I don't use very much on the brush. I do wipe off the excess before I blend it. And to get in those dark shadows, I'm using a luminous pencil called Light Aubergine, which is a really dark purple, sort of a reddish purple. Yeah, look, it's really good in shadows. Then I've gone over with the white luminance pencil before blending it out again, and that helps to give it that white hazy look. The wax in the luminance pencil just gives it a nice sheen when you blend it out. And if you are going to go over it like that with the white luminance pencil, it is good to make the background a bit darker than what you're planning, as it does lighten it up a bit. But if you've not done that before, it's good to test it out on a little piece of paper to see what the effect is, so you know how dark you need to do that initial layers before you do the white luminance pencil, so you know how it impacts on the color intensity. Just building up the layers, and with everything in colored pencil, it's do a lot of layers. You just do lots of light layers and blend it, and then more layers, and you just sort of build up the intensity of color. You don't get it straight away. You don't ever just do one. And here I'm using a little bit of the titanium white powder from Brush and Pencil on just an applicator, just seeing how it goes on this background, and sort of just tapping it on and seeing the effect that I can get. And now I've mixed it, before it was dry, now I'm testing it out with mixed with some of the touch-up texture to make it a bit more liquidy so you could paint it on. And so I've just gone over and lightened quite a lot of the areas up. And after letting that dry for about 15 minutes, I'm now coming back on top of it with some yellows and bringing that yellow into the picture. And sometimes when you want to put yellow in a piece, you need to put white down first, because the yellow won't show up before otherwise. Unless, of course, you've put it straight onto the paper without having put color down first. But a trick, if you do want to add yellow in later on, using the titanium white powder and being able to apply that onto the piece, you can then go over with yellow and just lighten up that whole area. And the yellow, you'll actually be able to see the yellow as opposed to it, because yellow is not a very opaque color. Now this section of the page is the bottom left. And so I'm just doing the same thing as I did in the top half of the artwork, just doing light layers of the colors, blending some more layers, and then going over with the luminance white pencil just to lighten it all out and get that white hazy look. As you see, I'm a little bit messy with how I do the white luminance pencil. I'm not trying to keep tight circles, and you blend it all out and that swishes it around a bit. But then I'm also going to be going over it with the titanium white, so I wasn't too worried about getting that white in really smoothly, because I knew it would be covered up by the titanium white in the next section. But I was going to finish this part before getting that out, and just doing this leaf with the different greens and blues and building it up. This leaf is a bit closer to the bunch of grapes, so there's more detail in this leaf than in the rest of the background. Now coming back over with the titanium white mixed with the touch-up texture. And as you can see, I found it a lot easier to do it using the brush rather than the applicator. I found the applicator didn't really work very well on this, but having it mixed in with the touch-up texture worked perfectly. And see how well that yellow is standing out on top of the white. Now just building that up and getting a bit more color in. I love how with that titanium white, it doesn't matter if you've if you've covered it too much with color pencil, it just goes straight on top, and then you can lighten it up and use colors like yellow, which you otherwise wouldn't have been able to put on top of the rest of the colors. And now I'm starting on the grapes. I'm just adding the light layers, getting the shadow in along the bottom of the grape and making sure I get that dark enough. Adding a little bit of brown into the dark shadowed area between the grapes, blending it out and then building up those layers a bit more. I'm using a bit of the white to make that little sheen on top of the grapes, and then using a bit of the luminance white as well, not just the polychromos white. And just building up the colour on those grapes to get them to the colour that I want. And often you don't just use one colour for everything. There's so many colours that go into making these grapes look realistic. They may be purple, but there's so many different colours. And then you've got this green grape in the middle. And you just use the earth green was that grey green that I used. It was that one of those pencils I use a lot. It works well in so many pieces. When I'm colouring in, it may look like I'm just sort of scribbling it all over in these videos, but I am actually using quite controlled pencil marks, so that you're not getting lines going in all directions. In these grapes, you want to follow the curve of the grape with the pencil line, so that if any marks do show through in the final layers, it follows the line of the grape. Just like if you are doing an ocean piece, you want your lines are going horizontal to follow the line of the waves. It's best to work in a way where you can hide your pencil marks, so they're not noticeable. But often, once you get through to the final layers, your pencil strokes aren't really showing at all, because the way it blends, the pencil strokes are hidden. You see I'm adding quite a light flesh colour, those light pinks in there into the grapes as well. So they're purple grapes, but they've got pink in them. They've got lots of shades of blues, and they've got some greens in them as well. It's a lot of colours in these simple grapes. And building up the shadows in between the grapes. And you'll notice that there's a lot of little tiny circles, which are the grapes which didn't form properly. So when you've got a bunch of grapes, they don't always have all of the grapes which form nice fleshy fruit. You've got the ones which didn't, and they form those little hard circles. And it's always good to remember that when you're drawing stuff, sometimes you want to include things like that where it's not a perfect bunch of grapes. You've got these other bits which show that it's more realistic when you include the flaws in a subject rather than just all the perfect points. So in this case, you've got the fruit that didn't form properly, and it makes it look more realistic. And you've got a couple of the grapes which are green, so they're not all uniform purple. The flaws make a piece more realistic. And just going over with the white luminance pencil. The white luminance pencil gives that little white sheen on the grapes, which looks quite nice. And there you go. As you can see, the piece looks quite different from what you see in the video. It looks a lot more vibrant when I take a photo of it in proper lighting than what you see in the video. I hope you've enjoyed this tutorial, and I'll see you all next time. Bye for now.